Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari 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 Yasoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Soda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Vraja Jana Natiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari 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 Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari 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 Yasoda Nandana Raja Jana Ranjana 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 Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Prabhupada 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 Shila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Shila Prabhupada Jai Vishnupad Paramamsa Pariraj Shakacharya Astutar Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Paramamsa Pariraj Shakacharya Astutar Sata His Divine Grace Shri Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Shri Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se ko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Devi Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Briyat Madanga Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktarinda Ki Jai O glorious to the assembled devotees O glorious to the assembled devotees, O glorious to the assembled devotees, O glorious to Lotus Sita, Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so today we're reading from that's it. Chapter 3, text 34 of the Bhagavad Gita. So So I can just give a bit of context just before I kind of read the verse. So the title of the chapter 3 in the Bhagavad Gita is called, actually before we start, I'll just say a few prayers just before. So Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Jakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutade Saim Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru and Vaishnavam Shra Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padansa Ganalalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Kurna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpaturubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so I'll just give a little context in terms of what we're reading in the chapter, and then I'll read the verse, and then we can go from there. So the title of this chapter is called Karma Yoga, and in this chapter, Krishna is basically speaking to Arjuna about different types of different aspects. The first thing that Arjuna asks is, Krishna's spoken about intelligence and how the importance of intelligence, and then what happens is Arjuna's kind of bewildered because he says in one aspect he said that you should act in Krishna consciousness, and then in another aspect he said that you should use your intelligence, and so this is like, for example, in our kind of day and age, this is like you have some people who think that to attain something in life you can just think about things, you don't have to do action, but you can just kind of sit there and think about things, and they'll go to the forest and they'll become a recluse almost. And then there's other people who think by acting, by just doing lots of things, that you can become happy in this world. And so then Krishna is saying that actually he's telling Arjuna that one should act in Krishna consciousness. And then he goes on to say what are the symptoms of those people who act in Krishna consciousness. What are the qualities? What do they experience? What do they experience in their life? What do they experience in their heart? And what are the symptoms of that? And then Krishna goes on and carries on, and then describes how he's come in there's been so many different examples that have come just to give these examples of how we should live our lives in Karma Yoga. Because one may think, how is it possible that I can do my work and all these things but still think of Krishna, still maintain my spirituality? And so Krishna says that there's been so many different examples that he's come to give, and that he himself has come also as one reason, as he's come to give an example for all of us. And then he's describing how we all have different inclinations in this world. And I'm sure we've all seen that we have certain tendencies, certain habits, certain things which we kind of, we just naturally go to, And even we can tell this from previous lives as well, because you'll come in with certain things in this life and you'll just do them very naturally and very quickly. I remember from a very young age, I had this tendency to be a bit of I could really knuckle down on things, So, if you had a test or an assignment or something like that, I was able to just kind of put everything down and really focus on that. And my parents, they never really understood where it came from, and neither did I. So we can see that these things kind of come from past lives, that these different tendencies that we all have, different inclinations, we have them. And they come from past lives, and Krishna says that one can't repress them, that one actually has to engage, use them in his devotional service. And so now that leads us to our verse today. So I'll just read the Sanskrit and the purport, and then we can go from there. Okay. Indriya sendriya saryate ragadvesha vyavastito tayo navasam magajit tohi asya paripatino. So also cool. I'll just read it because we're short time. So the translation is: there are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification, but those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement, but one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relations with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother, but in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise there will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations, and yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always a chance of an accident even on the royal roads. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been a current The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must always be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness or acting always in the loving service of Krishna detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness. So yeah, I know that was quite a lengthy purport and a lot was said there. So we'll try to break it down so that we can take something away and that we can try to apply and make it relevant in our lives. So so the first point that I was thinking about when reading this verse was it was actually how so when Srila Prabhupada is describing that one should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they're stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. I was thinking about this and I was thinking, when people hear about sense control, when we hear about, you have to control your senses, you have to regulate your life and all these things, the first thing that kind of came to my mind and heart is like, oh, there's more work to do, I've already got so much going on in my life. I've already got all these things going on in my life. Why do I have to do something else now? Is this thing really for me? I've already got so many engagements I'm going on about. Do I really need to do something else? Is this really worth my efforts? And it's really nice because Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya, he gave this term, simple living and high thinking. And he gave this term, simple living and high thinking. And what it basically means is that this simple living means that we actually need a lot less than we think we do to live. We actually need a lot less than we think we do. But what's happened is we've trained ourselves, we've trained our mind for so many lifetimes that we think we need all these things, And I'm sure you would have seen this, because what sometimes happens is in life, and I'm sure we've all experienced this, sometimes things will be taken away from us. And when they're taken away from us, we actually realize after some time, it may be difficult at the start, but then sometimes we have this kind of relief in our heart, and we think that, oh wait, I actually didn't need that so much, you know? But a lot of the time is spent on trying to relieve this desire that is constantly going on in the mind, you know? And then when that desire has just been fulfilled, then we feel peaceful. But the only reason we feel peaceful is not actually because of what we've got, but it's just that the mind, there's some kind of stimulus, which then we feel like, oh, okay, it's done. And it's actually the nagging of the mind that actually being relieved that, oh, I've got what I need. But the problem with this is it can lead to addictions. It can lead to so many different things which cause so much distress to people's lives and so much difficulty to people's lives. So actually the first thing about this verse is that actually it's for all of our benefit. All the instructions given to us by Krishna, we should really deeply understand that they're really for our benefit. And that can help us to open our hearts to try to imbibe this in our lives. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say, that actually, although it seems like it's maybe a lot of effort to kind of think about these things, to control your mind and all these things, but actually what Krishna is saying is really for our benefit, and we'll go into a bit more about what that means and how we can do that. Yeah. And so in this verse, Srila Prabhupada gives the example. So I'm just going to get something up just to make sure. Yeah, okay. So Srila Prabhupada in this verse gives the example of marriage. And it's very natural in this world that everyone wants to have a partner, someone to kind of lead their life alongside. Or for most people at least, is a very kind of natural thing. And Krishna's not saying in this verse that one has to control this tendency to have a partner or relationship with someone, but actually that one should have this relationship, but then engage it in the Lord's service. You know, Srila Prabhupada says that the whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on a platform of Krishna consciousness. So what this means is that there's a principle in the Nectar of Devotion by Srila Rupa Goswami, one of our teachers, and what he describes is that Yukta Vairagya. And so what this Yukta Vairagya basically means is that we all have different propensities, but by seeing that these propensities actually, the proprietor of all these senses, the proprietor of all these things is actually Krishna. And by having that vision, we can then engage in the world with that lens that these are all Krishna's things. And then by engaging them in his service, then actually what happens over time is we get purified of that inclination. And so that the desire, which initially was to enjoy that same thing, then becomes a desire to actually serve Krishna. And Krishna says this, Srila Prabhupada says this in the first thing, that those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. And this is very sweet, because actually what is being said is that what actually is material sense gratification? Material sense gratification is actually, I want to enjoy someone else's property. I actually want to enjoy the Supreme Lord's property. I want to cheat him again. I've cheated him for many lifetimes, whether we realize it or not. And this material sense gratification is saying to Krishna, hey, I want to still live separately from you. And so it's actually a very distasteful thing if you actually think about it. You know, someone's given so much to you. It's like a parent. If you see a parent and they've given so much to you, naturally you feel some debt towards them. But if they come and need your help or something like that, then you don't give it to them. So similarly, Krishna is like that. He's given us so much, he's giving us so much, but we don't want to acknowledge the realities. So this is actually what material sense gratification is. And so when Srila Prabhupada is saying that there's a natural reluctance to actually want to engage in material sense gratification, is because the devotee realizes this. The devotee actually realizes in their heart, and then because they've realized they've cheated Krishna for so many lifetimes, they then just want to serve Krishna. So actually there's actual pleasure to be had here. Anyway, so back to the example of marriage that's given in this verse. And so what Srila Prabhupada is saying, that you can engage this tendency in Krishna consciousness. And what is actually being said is, it's actually, it's very nice, because when Srila Prabhupada says that you can engage this tendency, or he then goes on to speak about how that there's rules and regulations according to the scriptures that one must follow. And then he gives some kind of examples. According to scripture injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women should be considered as one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed. And it's very nice, because if you actually look at this statement, what's being said is that even though this tendency is there to enjoy in this way in the conditioned soul, what actually happens is, if you engage in that way and you have many wives, or you engage in many illicit relationships in this way, what actually happens is you end up suffering. And Krishna makes this world in such a way that you'll actually suffer. And it's very kind, because actually what happens is the jiva, the living entity, we have to learn that way through suffering. And I'm sure we've all seen that in our lives, where going through suffering, we will learn that actually this wasn't the right thing to do. And so actually what happens is, if one engages in such activities with having many wives, one will actually experience the repercussions of that, not only in this life, but in the next life as well. How do we see that? In this life, we can see that people who engage in illicit activities, what happens is they'll get so many diseases. Maybe not now, but later in their life, they'll suffer so much. Not only that, you can see that people on their deathbed, 80 years old, 90 years old, they're on their deathbed, but actually what they're wanting is, they want to still have an illicit relationship with a woman. And think about how embarrassing that is to someone. It's actually embarrassing to the soul. That someone's on their deathbed, they're asking for their life to be prolonged because they still want to enjoy once more. Imagine leaving on your deathbed, and that's what you're thinking about. You know, it's a very sad state of affairs that we're actually kind of engaged in right now. And so what's actually being said here is actually for our benefit. That actually one should regulate this. And so the purpose of this regulation, as Srila Prabhupada was saying, that you have this simple living and high thinking. So the simple living is to regulate our lives in such a way, and then the purpose of that regulation is then high thinking. And then what is this high thinking? What is this high thinking that Srila Prabhupada is speaking about? Srila Prabhupada there's a very nice verse in one of our texts called the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'll just read out the verse because it's very nice. Let's just get it up. It says, Artendriya Rama Sagosti Archishnaya Tatsamatanam Api Aparigrahanecha Vivikta Ruchya Paritoshatmani Vinare Gunapiyushapanat. And this basically means that one has to make progress in spiritual life by not associating with persons who are simply interested in sense gratification and making money. Not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. One can be thus elevated by being disgusted with a taste for sense enjoyment. So the key bit there that I wanted to take out, that one should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. And this is very nice because just before we were speaking about material addictions, how the mind becomes so addicted to things. But actually there's a positive addiction that's being given here. There's a positive obsession that one is actually looking for. And what is being said is that one cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so this is very, very sweet that actually Srila Prabhupada has given us so many literatures And how does this, what is the sweetness, what is this nectar that we've actually been discussed? And the part of this sweetness is that when the Lord comes, it's actually these relationships. The relationships between the Lord and his devotees. So when the Lord comes 500 years ago, he comes in the incarnation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what it said is that when the Lord is glorifying his devotee, it says he gains 5 mounts. It's like he's describing them with 5 mounts. And so this is a sweetness. The Lord, he's actually giving all the devotees that quality. He's giving the devotees all these qualities. But still, he still wants to give his devotee credit. And not just that, he wants to glorify them with 5 mounts. So similarly, we're getting pleasure out of glorifying the Lord. And who's the Lord getting pleasure out of glorifying? The devotee. And the devotee knows that actually this is all just the Lord's mercy. I have nothing to do with this. All this is his qualifications. How sweet is this relationship that is there? And not just that, so we were speaking about marriage, and as we were saying before, Krishna comes in this world to give us certain examples to live by. And so he comes and he becomes married. He gets married to 16,108 wives. And some people may say that we just said that, Srila Prabhupada just said that you can't, get married to more than one person. Why is it Krishna's getting married to 16,000 wives? But then the question is, can you take care of one wife? Yeah. First, if we can satisfy one wife, then maybe we can do 2. But because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, actually he can take care of everyone perfectly. So actually, this is a very sweet pastime. What happens is when he's with all of his wives in the different palaces, what happens is he's reciprocating with each and every wife very personally and intimately in a very intricate way. And what happens is Sri Narada Muni, he goes into each of these palaces in Dwarka, and what happens is he sees that, oh wait, Krishna's doing this in one palace. And then he goes to another palace and sees that, oh, Krishna's doing this in another palace. And then he'll go to another palace and see that, oh, Krishna's playing chess. Oh, okay, in another palace, Krishna's now worshipping me. So in each and every palace, Krishna's doing the same thing. So that same Krishna, he's expanded himself. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Jai Shri Shri Gaunitai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. And so this so one pastime which is very nice that Krishna has with one of his wives is that his wife's name is Satyabhama, and what happens is Krishna, he goes to Satyabhama wants a certain tree. It's called a Parijata tree, and these trees can only be found in the heavenly planets. Okay, and so let's just step back in the context. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything is emanating from him, and so if we take that point, all the material worlds, all the heavenly planets, they're actually coming from him. Okay, and so if that's the case, if he wanted to get a Parijata flower, he could immediately just click his fingers and the Parijata flower could be there. Yeah? But he doesn't do that. He actually goes all the way to the heavenly planets and gets the Parijata flower just for his devotee. And think about this. One of the statements is that we understand that we're the eternal servant of Krishna, that we're Jirvara Swarapoi Krishna and Chitas. We're always an eternal servant of Krishna. And who's Krishna? Krishna's the Purusha. Krishna is the enjoyer, the supreme enjoyer. And so then the question is, if Krishna in this pastime where is he getting his enjoyment? Oh, I have to go to the heavenly planets. Krishna's getting his enjoyment out of making this sacrifice for his devotees. Isn't that sweet? He's going out of his way to do something for his devotee. It's a very sweet exchange. And so then what happens is that Krishna goes and gets the Parijata flower and he has to fight Lord Indra. And what happens is that because Lord Indra, he's actually a devotee. He's a very, very, he's a sincere devotee. And what happens is he tends to he still has material attachments, so he still has this attraction to the material world, and so often or not he gets intoxicated by his power, and so he's attached to everything and thinks that it's his. And so Krishna, not only is he reciprocating with his devotee Satyabhama, at the same time he's reciprocating with Lord Indra to detach him from all these things, to just give him a reminder, hey look, these are my things, it's not yours. And so then what happens is he then takes this Parijata flower and then goes back to Satyabhama to give that tree. And it's a very sweet pastime because, as well, you think about it, it's in a relationship between a male and female. The males may not like to admit it, but who's always in control? Fortunately, it's the females. Whether the males like it or not, it's the females. The females have the males under control, and then what happens is you see that Krishna here he's controlled. He's controlled by his devotees' love. He's controlled by his devotees' love. He's moving according to the devotee's desire. Again, we're an eternal servant of Krishna. We're meant to fulfill the desires of the Supreme Lord. But here what's happening is, how does the Lord reciprocate with one who's pure, who has just a desire to serve him? He reciprocates by fulfilling their desires. So then the question is, if this is the sweetness that is there in these pastimes that's being said, why is it that why is it spiritual life is so difficult? Why is it so difficult that we have to do all these things? Why is it so difficult to get some inclination to come to the temple, to engage in this devotional service? And as Srila Prabhupada says that, he says one should not come under control of such attachment and aversion because they're stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So what we can see is that there, even though there's this nectar that's there for us, there's actually many stumbling blocks along the way for us. Many different distractions, many different disturbances that can cause us to kind of, feel that this may not be possible, or how are we going to do this? And so the point about this verse that's actually really important is that Srila Prabhupada says, so first Srila Prabhupada says that we have to follow these rules and regulations to have this gradual process. But then at another point he then says that actually one cannot be attached to the rules and regulations. And then they seem contradictory points. How is that the case that one shouldn't be attached to them? And it's because actually if one is just following something out of duty or following some rules and regulations, what will happen at some point is that one won't be able to continue, because actually the nature of the soul is anandamayo bhyashat, which basically means that we're all pleasure seeking by nature. And one can't get pleasure out of just following a certain process. That doesn't satisfy the soul. One maybe gets some pleasure out of pride that, yes, I'm following or I'm doing these things. And that may be a certain level of spirituality that we're at, but actually it doesn't satisfy the soul, so it won't last. It doesn't actually last, and it doesn't give any tangible happiness to the heart. And so then what is being said is that we can't just rely on these rules and regulations to get us somewhere. It's just like if you go to the gym. I'm using the gym example a few times today. But if you go to the gym, if you lift a certain weight for 3 months and you lift that same weight every day, you'll gain some strength. But then what will happen is, if you continue lifting that weight, then what will happen is you'll actually lose the muscle that you've been gaining, over time. And the reason is because you actually need to upgrade yourself. It's not a matter of staying at the same level. So spirituality, Krishna consciousness is also like that as well, where actually we have to continually upgrade ourselves, continually sacrifice more, continually experience more attraction, pleasure for the Lord. And the reason is because ultimately we're all looking for pleasure. And because this material energy, everything around us is constantly bombarding us to want things of this world, then actually we have to look in another direction. And we're going to be constantly bombarded in that way, especially in this age. Just think of all the distractions that we have in this time. It's actually crazy to think about how much there is out there to distract us. And so there's a nice pastime in this regard to kind of emphasize this point on how even if one is following the rules and regulations, that one has to ultimately depend on the Lord. And so there's a nice pastime, and it's in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's called. Some of you may have heard of this pastime, Ajamil's pastime. And what happens is that Ajamil, from kind of very young, he's kind of trained up very nicely to be a devotee, and some of his qualifications. It's just like if you go to a job interview, you have your CV and you have certain qualifications that you write down. So similarly here, these are the qualifications of Ajamil. And it says that in the beginning, this Brahmana named Ajamil studied all the Vedic literatures. He was a reservoir of good character, good conduct, and good qualities. Firmly established in executing all the Vedic injunctions, he was very mild and gentle. He kept his mind and senses under control. Furthermore, he was always truthful. He knew how to chant the Vedic mantras, and he was also very pure. Anyway, it goes on. But these points that's being said, he's actually able to do these things. He's able to control his mind and senses. He's executing Vedic injunctions. But then what happens is, in this pastime, is that as he's performing his regulations, what happens is he actually he comes in touch with seeing a prostitute embracing a man. And what happens is, even though he has such strong intelligence, such faith in the scripture, he's unable to control his intelligence. As is being said, is that one should not be controlled by such attachment. But in this state, he's actually completely helpless. He's tried his best. He's following all the rules and regulations, but ultimately he's being controlled by it, and it comes to a point where he can't get this prostitute out of his mind. And then what happens is he leaves everything. He leaves his spiritual teacher. He leaves his family. He leaves his wife, and just goes to marry this prostitute. And what happens is he goes and marries this prostitute and will then just do anything for that prostitute. And he just becomes so absorbed in this and forgets everything he was doing. And then what happens is, it's a very sweet pastime, because what happens is the Lord protects his devotee. And how does the Lord do this? It's said that when he was naming his children, the Lord in the heart inspired him to actually name his child Narayan. So what happened was he was actually traveling once, and he saw a saintly person, and he asked the saintly person, "Hey, I'm about to have a child. What can I name that child?" And what happens is the saintly person says, "Oh, you should name the child Narayan." And so he names his child Narayan, and naturally throughout his life, as a father, he's just continuously calling his son's name, just like we do call our children's names. And so then what happens is he's then at the time of his death, and he calls out the name Narayan. And this is the sweetness and kindness of the Lord, that actually, even though he calls out the name Narayan, he calls out his son's name. His whole intention is to call out his son's name. And the Lord, he doesn't see that. He doesn't actually see who he's actually calling out for. Oh, what's the purpose of his calling out for? All he just sees that this devotee of mine is calling my name. And so what he does is he sends his own personal servants, the Vishnu Dutas, to come and save him. And he comes, and they come, and basically they tell the Yamadutas, who are the people who are about to give him all these sinful reactions for doing all these improper actions throughout his life, in marrying a prostitute, engaging in so many stealing, cheating, all these activities. And so what then happens is he's actually witnessing this going on in front of him. He sees that these Yamadutas are there, and the attendants of the Lord have come. And so then what happens is he sees how the Lord's attendants have actually come to save him. And after that, he feels some remorse and some repentance. And he sees that actually I've wasted so much time. I've wasted so much time in our lives. And I'm sure some of us will come to that point in our lives where we don't want to get to a point in our lives where we've actually feel that, look at how much time I've wasted. I was given so much opportunity. I came to the temple. I was given all these things. And then what have I done with it? I've completely forgotten, or I've not even invested in the purpose of my life. I've not even started to look at it. And now I'm getting old, and what is the use now? I don't have any strength. I don't have any mental power to engage in this. So Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto, he describes that one at any stage of life he describes that when one is young, that one should engage in Krishna consciousness. But for us, that means that wherever we're at, we should take this very seriously, because we never know what's going to happen ahead. Well, we do know, but yeah. So I thought I can just end there maybe, and see if there were any other questions or comments that people had. Yeah, were there any questions, comments, criticisms, clarifications from anyone? No? Okay. Okay, I guess what we can do is we can have some kirtan for maybe about 5 minutes or so, and then the curtains will open for Aarti. Yeah, and then we'll be able to kind of take darshan of their lordships. So yeah, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Saminiti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Saminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasya Chadesatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Asya Chadesatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Advaita Gadadara Shiva Shadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Shadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Shadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we'll just have Arti now. So yeah, please do feel free to stay. And then there'll be some prasadam after. So thank you very much for coming. Herbo.
Please, DT greetings. Stand up, please. Thank you. कोई है?